Well, welcome to Voices from Oxford. Thank you very much for your precious time. By the way, you look great. Tell me about
thank
this
you.
costume.
This is a Tibetan dress. Yeah. It's usually called chupa.
Yeah.
And
chupa,
or it can be called wula in some parts. And that's what I'm wearing to represent what I'm studying.
So you had it made in Tibet?
Yes.
Oh, right, fantastic. Looks like silk.
Well, it's not silk. It used to be made of silk in the past, but now it isn't.
Right. Rachel, so you've been to Tibet as well?
Yeah, so I went for the first time in September just past.
Oh, right. Okay.
Unfortunately, I don't have a tuba to wear.
It doesn't matter. Okay, could you briefly tell us about yourselves?
So, both of us are PhD students in Tibetan Studies, and I'm in the kind of second year. And I like to see how the Tibetan culture reflects their beautiful natural environment they live in. But I work more on traditional notions of the environment, so which role it has played in Tibetan religion, in Tibetan culture in general, than just what people have been thinking about the animals they have been observing, about plants, how they have been used in Tibetan medicine, for example. So I worked with doctors.
Medical doctors?
Yes, yeah, Tibetan doctors. And that's it.
So what did you learn, from working with medical doctors in Tibet?
So I've learned another very different perception of the natural world than we have. Ours, at least nowadays, is quite utilitarian, whereas in Tibet there is a great respect to the wildlife and the landscape, and people have to behave very often in quite strictly, in a strictly defined way, not to disturb the landscape. That means not to disturb the deities, not to disturb different spirits, and the doctors have to also observe these codes.
Wow, communication with the nature.
Yes, in
that's
a way.
Great. I love that idea.
So there is this notion that many features of landscape are inhabited by deities or by kind of lower spirits, and these deities are nice to us as long as we are nice to them. So we can't disturb them, we can't extract soil where they live, from places where they live. We can't get too much timber from the forests, for example. We can't over-collect plants. So this is what I've learned, that we should be thinking in a different way about the place we live in, and that there are also many ways how we can harm it if we don't think like it.
Right, it sounds like a hermit kingdom, correct? Right, Rachel, you've been to Tibet, right?
Yeah, so I went for the first time in September. I was there for just short of a month. My main point of interest was going to Gonlong Jumpa Ling, which is a monastery just north of Xining, which ties in with my research. So I'm currently translating the autobiography of a Tibetan monk from the 18th century, who was also quite an important historical figure and doctor, and he hailed from that monastery. So it was nice, having read about this place for 2 years now, being actually able to go there and see it.
So how about you? Why did you become interested in Tibetan studies? It's quite unusual.
Yeah, my mum says the same. So I guess very similar in that I studied history and study of religions at SOAS, my undergraduate. I started in East Asian studies, and then you narrow as time goes on. And as Anna mentioned, it was just the fact that so little is known. It's a very general history that you learn about Tibet, and it can be easily covered in the space of a semester's worth of lectures. And I'm really interested in the local history, so looking at things from kind of the grassroots level instead of looking at this very broad category.
Right. Very interesting. Right. So now we can talk about your research at deeper level. What are you currently working on?
So I'm working on mountain deities, on how again, it's notions tied to land, how these notions have been shaping society, the political structures of the society, power structures in nomadic settings, leadership of nomadic clans, and then rights of these clans to claim land. So how the landscape have been influencing these structures, the social structures of nomads in eastern Tibet.
Right. So, over to you.
So it's the autobiography that I've been translating, which has been my main focus for the last few years, and picking out key themes within that autobiography. So the monk that I'm working on not only was a religious figure, but he was also a doctor. So I'm looking at how he travelled and how that was linked with this idea that he could cure people and heal, but also his role in politics as well. So I'm kind of just linking those themes up and seeing how it all connects.
Obviously, when you went to Tibet, that is part of your fieldwork, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us more about it. I'd like to know more about it.
Oh, yeah. You can go first. You spent more time there.
So I've spent more than 1 year in Tibet, and then I've been returning there. And it was amazing. I was going around monasteries, talking to monks, talking to lay people, and collecting manuscripts. And as I said, Tibetan studies are a pioneering discipline in a way. So if I collect a manuscript, usually it's not known in the West. So in fact, everything I collect, in a way, it's new. So it's very easy to explore. Yeah, and there's a huge amount, and I try to photograph art at monasteries, and again, in most cases, it hasn't been studied.
Yeah, very similar. The monastery that I went to, which was the main reason that I went out to Tibet, there's very little information on the monastery, but also very few pictures. And having read about this monastery, I was really keen to get a sense of the area that Sumpa Kempo, the monk I'm working on, lived in. So yeah, spent time going out there, documenting, meeting people who are really friendly, and again asking about how this figure is known in modern culture, and how he's remembered, which was great.
Yeah, sounds very interesting and exciting. Can you tell us a little bit more about the oral history of Tibetan studies?
Sure. So this is a project that Anna and I have been working on for almost a year, and it came about roughly this time last year when a professor, Elliot Sperling, passed away quite suddenly and unexpectedly.
Oh, how old are you?
65, I think.
Oh, very young, very young.
Which was a shock to the Tibetan community, and he was a very well-loved scholar.
And he was very, very energetic.
Oh, yeah.
So no one was expecting it, and he was healthy.
And we realised that we're very fortunate that Tibetan Studies is a very young discipline, and that actually a lot of the founders or pioneers of Tibetan study are very much alive and active. And we decided it would be a wonderful project to actually collect the recollections and memories of these pioneers and put them together.
Right. So you are planning to do more fieldwork, yeah?
Yeah, fieldwork within Western academia.
Right.
Yeah,
So
not just in Tibet. Yes, Paris, then several locations in Germany, Bonn, Leipzig, Berlin. Then we have already done several interviews and recorded several interviews. One was in Prague, one in Hungary, one in London, 2 in Oxford, but one professor was from Denmark, another one from Norway.
Right.
We have one person in Russia to interview. So it's in all cases the pioneers in their countries, the establishing figures.
If you walk in the street in Paris wearing this chuba, do you call it chuba?
Yes.
Yeah, I wonder how Parisian will react to you.
I haven't tried, but I can. I can try, and I can tell you then. Yeah.
You can even have an interview with a lady there.
I hope they'd like it.
It's quite fashionable.
Okay, coming back to the oral history of Tibetan studies, why do you think it's important?
We think that it's a very unusual opportunity to record how an academic discipline becomes created. The people we are working with, it's professors and friends. Not all of them are academics. And they are quite old now, as can be understood. And when they were young, they started exploring Tibet without the discipline existing, without knowing they would establish something called Tibetan Studies. And we like to see how diverse personalities create such a field. We like to see these people as people, not only as scholars who have CVs and articles, but as their personalities. And we want to see what was the instant that made them to explore what they explored. And then we think it's crucial because, as I said, many of them, or all of them, are old, and unfortunately some of them are not of good health. So we have already started interviewing people, and we have to carry on as soon as possible because these people are still here.
Yeah, that's why we are trying to help you, because you are students at Oxford University. Rachel, why do you think it's very important?
As Anna mentioned, it is very time sensitive, so we are eager to continue filming and recording as much as we can while people are still around and active. And again, I think part of it is collecting this information for us as Tibetologists and looking at what was the beginning of this very interesting and diverse field. But also it's great for getting Tibetan studies out there for the general public as well, which might not necessarily know a lot about Tibetologists.
Know about it.
And what we do. It's not always driven by people who are religious, which tends to be how most people perceive Tibetan studies. There's actually a very different group of interests within there, and we're all carving out our own little area within it.
And then also Tibetan studies are linked to Oxford. Actually, what we call Tibetan studies, and the name itself was invented in Oxford in 1979 when Michael Eris and his wife Osan Suu Kyi invited a group of their friends and colleagues who were interested in Tibet to Oxford, and they established this association and called themselves by this name. So we are trying to link this almost 40 years of history.
Right. Well, actually, I got to know about that story, especially when I had an interview with Professor David Cranston, because he was looking, as a medical professor, he was looking after Aung San Suu Kyi's husband, Michael. Yeah, so I knew a little about it. Okay, what did you do with the interviews?
So the main plan is we're recording them, so both on film, hopefully, and also voice recordings, which we are going to transcribe and put online on an online archive, which will be accessible to both scholars but also to the general public. We're also hoping to collect visual material, so we're encouraging anyone that we interview to let us take copies of pictures, flyers, or anything that links to the study of Tibet.
And we also hope that potentially the projects will lead to a creation of Tibetan Studies archives, because these people have their field work notes, their photographs, often of sites that don't exist anymore or have changed so much. So we would like to put these things together and probably host their collections here in Oxford.
Brilliant idea. Okay, so what's next when you finish your DPhil?
Fast.
Well, I'll continue doing what I've been doing. I have been fortunate to be employed in research already, so I'll continue with that. And one of the roles I think people in academia have is to help the cultures that we study to preserve their knowledge, And in Tibet, because it is a very quickly changing environment, many parts of its pressures and so varied culture are under the threat of cultural loss or knowledge loss. So I aim to contribute to preserving this knowledge which I value so much.
Fantastic. Rachel?
I would hope that we would continue this project, the Oral History of Tibet. At the moment, we're very much focusing on Europe, and because of financial reasons and also because of our timeline. But after my doctorate, I could see us taking this project globally and focusing on scholars that are based both in Asia and North America. So fingers crossed.
Okay, my last question is the following. Obviously, you met young people in Tibet as well, right?
Yeah.
So, do you think they are also sensitive about the fact that the world is spinning at the moment?
Spinning, like moving too quickly.
Yeah, Brexit and Trump. The world is mad at the moment.
Well, they have generally said they haven't got that good access to information.
Oh, they don't.
They don't,
right.
Because the media are
in a way,
Chinese
it's a blessing
media.
in disguise, then. They don't know about it, so they are happy.
Yeah, I would personally say that most people wouldn't know that much about it. Regarding Brexit, my friends, of course, or friends who have studied abroad, they are aware of these issues, so they wouldn't acknowledge of countries splitting from each other rather than working together. This is probably what they would say.
Yeah, no one mentioned it to me when I was out there.
When I was in Tibet, Trump was quite popular as being a big, strong man. But I think people didn't know much about international politics.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us, Voices Masters.
Well, nice meeting you.
I wish you good luck with your adventures and your research and all your interviews.
The same to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.